Radio Leicester.
Have you ever thought about being an author, actually putting pen to paper, fingers to typewriter, or indeed word processor, laptop, iPad, and actually coming up with a book of your own? They say we have all got one good book in us. Sometimes I think I would like to write a book. Sometimes I think, what would it be? And I scribble down ideas, and then I sit there and think, crikey, now I've got to write pages upon pages. Well, a professor from here in Leicestershire has found that book within him. Not only that, it's been nominated as one of the best books in the East Midlands. Dr. Jonathan Taylor is a lecturer in creative writing in the School of English at the University of Leicester, and his book, entitled Melissa, is shortlisted for the 2016 East Midlands Book Award. Well, to tell us more about it, of course, we invited him in. Good to see you, Jonathan. Thanks very much for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Tell us about Melissa. Just give us the synopsis of this particular book.
Well, it's a novel, and it's set in around the turn of the millennium, sort of 1999 to 2000 in Stoke, and it opens on one afternoon in June 1999 when a young girl called Melissa on a small street in Stoke-on-Trent dies of leukemia, and at that same moment everyone on the street experiences the same musical hallucination and hears the same music in their heads, and they come out of their doors, and just for sort of an hour or two they all get on, all of these people who've never talked to each other before, and they all get on, and so it's about that. It's a kind of partly non-fictional account of that phenomenon, and then the rest of the book is also about the family of the girl sort of dealing with grief and their terrible loss, and so on and so forth.
So Melissa, as you say, it opens. Melissa's died at this point, and something special happens on that high street, where normally I guess it would be like a busy high street. I'm not aware of Stoke. Is it Stoke High Street?
It's not a high street. It's a small kind of suburban close.
And everyone comes outdoors because they can hear the commotion, I guess, and just gets on. Something quite magical happens.
Yeah. So it's a kind of.
Is that thing then continues through the book?
So it's kind of dealt with through the book, and there's a musical strand all the way through the book, and some of this is kind of based on various real events. Some of them sort of personal to me when I was growing up, but also that there are documented cases throughout history of people having kind of collective hallucinations.
Really?
So, for example, I think it was 16th century in Strasbourg, there was a dancing plague whereby suddenly thousands of people spontaneously all started dancing, and they all heard the same music in their heads that they were dancing to.
That is strange. Wow.
Yeah, so I'm sort of really interested in these kind of phenomena that are really difficult to understand.
Yeah. Is Melissa based on anybody in particular or what?
Tangentially, yes. And I think it also kind of slightly grows out of a few experiences in my childhood, very sort of strange experiences in my childhood in Stoke, but also grows out of that we have twins. We have 7-year-old twins, and when they were born they were tiny. One of them was £2.
Oh my God.
And they were in the Royal Infirmary here in intensive care, and my wife also was very, very ill, and without even knowing it, I think that's the trauma of those few months kind of then informed writing the book. And I sort of it was kind of, without me even realising it, that it was a sort of me dealing with that sort of terror of having ill children.
Yeah.
In some ways.
Everyone well now, though?
They are absolutely fine. Yes, Rosie is still quite small, but I think maybe she is just small, and they're very lively and very, very much fun.
You say, you've answered my question, because I was sitting here thinking, why was it based in Stoke? But that's where you grew up.
It is, yes.
Did you spend all your life growing up in Stoke?
So I spent my first 19 years in Stoke, and I moved to Loughborough in 97 after some time in Coventry, so I sort of lived all around the Midlands.
Sounds like penance, doesn't it, after I spent some time in Coventry?
Yes, it does a bit, yeah.
So you grew up in Stoke, and so the places. I mean, do you use the places that you remember growing up, or is it I mean, is that relevant to the text?
It's absolutely relevant.
Right.
I firmly believe that all writing, place is so important to all writing.
Because some authors, they make up a town, don't they? Or they come up and it's a fictional place. It's not a real place. But yours very much is.
They do. But often, even when they've made up a town, it's really based on
Of course.
their home life. I mean, to take an extreme example, Lord of the Rings is really based on where Tolkien lived and so on and so forth. Even though it's a kind of fantasy world, and so I've written, my first novel was set in Loughborough, but a kind of fictional version of
So
Loughborough.
this is your second work, is it?
It is, yeah.
Oh right.
Yeah.
How did you get on with your first piece?
That was...
What was it called?
That was called Entertaining Strangers,
Right.
and it came out in 2012, and that was also shortlisted for the East Midlands Book Awards.
Oh wow! So you're on a roll.
Hopefully.
So this is your year, with any luck.
Well, fingers crossed.
Obviously, you're a lecturer. I'm just reading this. You're a lecturer in creative writing in the School of English at the University of Leicester. So you know what you're doing when it comes to writing. But is it? I mean, I guess your students must be just so impressed that they're being taught by this guy who's actually now shortlisted for the best book in the whole of the East Midlands.
Well, maybe the ones that know that.
Oh, you haven't told them?
No,
They don't know, really?
Well, they'll know gradually, but...
Are you worried that they might start saying, well, how do I do this then? How do I do... Can you write this for me? Can you just write that for me?
I mean, I've taught creative writing for years now in various Leicestershire universities, and I think it actually really helps me as well as, helping them. I mean, teaching is such a kind of mutual thing.
What's the art of writing a book then? I mean, as a creative writing lecturer, I mean, where do you start if somebody's listening in or whatever, without sort of giving away all the tricks of the trade? But where do you begin? There's that initial thought, isn't there? How do I start this book?
I think one thing that, because I really do believe that everyone has got books in them.
So when I sit there
totally
wobbling on saying,
that.
"Oh, I wish I could write a book," I've
Yeah.
sort of thought about it. There is a book there inside.
Yeah, I believe that it is a really democratic art form that anyone can do, and I've often said that I was actually a really slow learner. I learned to read and write really late.
Really?
And I'm still a very slow reader. So I believe it is something. There's nothing natural about it. I believe it is something that you can pick up. There's something that Stephen King said many years ago, which is that all bad writing comes out of fear, and that people who are worried about it or scared or feel that they have to write in a certain way.
Yeah.
I've got to write in this really highbrow way or this really kind of over-descriptive way because I'm afraid of what people will think. That's where the bad writing comes from. And actually, the good writing is often just very close to how people speak, very conversational and very straightforward in various ways.
It's funny because writing a book is a bit like when people have to go on the radio. They feel they need to be somebody else. They feel they have to almost put on radio voice, and they have to talk in a certain way, and every T and and AN and all that. They must get all the vowels right and everything else. Whereas actually, as I say to people when they say, "Well, I don't know, I haven't spoken on the radio," just be yourself, just be natural.
I think that's absolutely right. Yeah.
You just got to be natural because you can't fake it. You can't continue, like that.
Yeah, and my very first book was a memoir, which was.
Is this Entertaining Strangers?
No, that was a book called Take Me Home, which came out in 2007, and it was a memoir about me and my father and growing up in Stoke, and obviously what helped is I knew all the voices inside out. I know my voice, obviously.
Yeah.
I also knew my father's voice, my mother's voice, and just writing. People say, "Oh, write what you know," but the point of that is that you're kind of occupying it from the inside, and you know your own world. And honestly, I really believe that everyone has fascinating things to say. We live in this world where, we think that the only people who have stories worth telling are celebrities and so on and so forth. Don't believe that at all. I think that actually some of the most fascinating and interesting stories come from people who have apparently ordinary lives. But
You know
no
what,
one
you
has
touched on
really
something there. When I went through journalism school, and I did a postgraduate in broadcast journalism. I remember I had a lecturer who said a story is when something ordinary happens to someone extraordinary, or when something extraordinary happens to someone ordinary. And there's a really good. This is when something ordinary happens to someone extraordinary. I've got the Sun newspaper here. I was flicking through it earlier on, and they've got a big article here about Mariah Carey, okay, international singer, songwriter, sending her. She's in the UK at the minute. She's doing a tour, and the story is, it's got a big full-page spread in here, is that she sent the people who, like her minions, who run around after her, to Asda's supermarket. Now, the story is that an international megastar like Mariah Carey would possibly eat or have food or anything from Asda.
Yeah.
And that's the proof of a story, because that's something very ordinary, going to a supermarket, happening to something quite extraordinary, Mariah Carey in that case. And it is true, isn't it, that if you think about that, you know, it doesn't work all the time. Some people say, well, that's just not that. But there is an element of everybody has a story, don't they?
They do, yeah. And extraordinary things happen every day, to, you know, people walking down the street, to people who you pass and you don't realise that something's happening, and you only have to. All writers are eavesdroppers, and you only have to eavesdrop on a bus or a train to hear the strangest things and the most weird things in the most banal places.
Yeah, a lot of people, when I'm interviewing them, they say to me, "Have you got questions?" And I go, "No." And they go, "Well, I don't know what you're going to ask me." And I go, "I don't know what I'm going to ask you yet." And a lot of people, they think a lot of presenters, and some presenters are more scripted. They need a script. They need to have question after question. But it's a bit like with you, with letting your mind run free, that if you have it all written down, so my book is about this, we're going to do this, then we're going to go to that, you're not listening to what's being said, are you? And you're not looking and you're not reading your text. You said something earlier on, you said you're a slow reader, which fills me with great joy, because I'm a bit of a slow reader, and I find it difficult to get into books sometimes, because I can be a bit slow with them, picking them up, continuing them, and that kind of thing as well. But this award that you're hopefully going to win. You've been nominated for the East Midland Book Award 2015. When will you find out?
It will come out in June. The results are come out in the middle of June.
Really? Well, they're going to keep you waiting for a while, aren't they?
They are. Yes. my twins are very excited, and have already decided that if in the event that I do win, that they've already spent the money. They've already.
I was going to say, is
decided.
there a cash bonus that comes your way?
It's going to all go on Teddy's ponies.
How delightful! And you've probably got other ideas for it, have you?
Possibly, yes, but I won't be allowed to kind of.
What effect will it have if you win? I mean, obviously you're a lecturer, as I said, at the University of Leicester. But what effect? I mean, if this takes off, could you see potential in, touring it, turning it into a screenplay or something like that?
Well, it's lovely being shortlisted. I mean, that's, in a way, that is winning.
You sound a bit like one of those millionaires who wins the lottery and goes, "It won't change my life."
It's just lovely being shortlisted, and every book, really, as a writer, what really matters. I mean, I don't believe that writing is a competition, and every book, what really matters is the writing itself. If you're a real writer, what you care about is writing, and then having readers who like what you do.
Yeah.
And if this means that there are a few more people who enjoy the book, then that's lovely, really, and that's what you write for.
Jonathan, thank you very much indeed for coming in. Good to see you. Jonathan Taylor there.
Thank you.
And his book, Melissa, is available now, isn't it? It's out now.
It is.